Hello, everyone, and welcome to the League One Lowdown. Another live episode here on YouTube, reviewing the final of the four League One playoff semi-finals. Myself, Jamie Johnson, alongside Callum Davies. Before we jump into the game, and not much of a spectacle, but we will dissect it as best we can. Callum, how are you this evening?
Very grateful that it's over. Very
Didn't
happy
go
that
to extra
game's
time.
over. It was a bit. Yeah, I've got an early alarm in the morning, so I was fearing the worst. I've got to be on the road early in the morning, and I quite frankly don't fancy doing that drive on 4 hours sleep. So at least I get an extra hour. Thanks, Matty Goden. So yeah, not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, very good. Yeah, myself a little bit glad it is finished. I've not got as early a start as you tomorrow, but yeah, I don't think I could have done extra half an hour because, as we'll get on to, it wasn't the most exciting game in the world, especially in the backdrop of the game yesterday and both legs really of that Stockport Leyton Orient tie, and in the Championship, the Sunderland Coventry second leg with that late winner in that game. This one didn't quite live up to those sort of standards, but we still got that sort of magic moment, if you like, with Matty Goden's goal fairly late on in the piece, 81st minute. I think at the time, the first shot on target. There was only 3 in the game, all for Charlton in the end. And I mean, absolutely incredible scenes after the game with the pitch invasion, and just before that, with the camera really focusing in on Nathan Jones, the Charlton manager, as he broke down. It looked like broke down in tears, didn't it, Callum? The last couple of minutes of the game, where they've got themselves over that hurdle to get them to Wembley, but there's still one more game to go.
I mean, people who are scrolling through our comment section will see that the fans don't have a lot of love for Nathan Jones, but I think about the journey him as a manager he must have been on. Obviously, everything that happened in the Premier League, everything that's happened in the Championship, and he's taken that probably what was the only logical step in his career to come back down to League One to prove himself. I don't think he had much of a choice in that. I don't think any Championship club would have taken him at that stage. And for him, obviously, he'll see this as quite a personal victory. He'll see this as kind of justification. Obviously, it's been a long time in the coming for Charlton. We spoke towards the end of last year. We just kind of thought, what were they doing? They seem to be drawing a lot of games. And, kind of that's, dare I say, that ability to draw games is what's effectively won them this tie because, they've kept 2 clean sheets back to back. I think over the course of the 2 legs between both sides, there was only 8 shots on target in 180 minutes of football, which is terrible, and no amount of game with those stats can ever be entertaining to watch. But for was it about 24,000 people at the Valley today? I'd imagine. They've witnessed something incredible. Maybe not the 3,000-4,000, I guess, Wycombe fans, but huge, incredible scenes for a club that I don't want to say is a sleeping giant because they do tend to find themselves at League One relatively often. But they're dare I say a Championship level club, and good times for Charlton, I suppose.
Well, definitely, yeah, and a great result. One of our commenters here on YouTube. We are live on YouTube as we have been throughout these semi-finals. Do put your comments, questions, thoughts, whatever it may be, in the chat, and we'll do our best to reference those as we go on through the podcast. Of course, thank you as well to people who are listening after the fact. The game started at, I think, at a fairly quick pace. It was a great atmosphere from the very first kick of the ball. And the game started pretty quickly. There was an early penalty shout, which was very quickly and very rightfully waved away. No contact on Campbell for Charlton. And that brings me on really to my next point with Lloyd Jones. I think a real aspect of this game, and someone in particular to pull out of it, was Lloyd Jones. Has been fantastic all season, and the put in my notes that he was commanding, and he's shown sort of sparks of that early on, and it continued throughout the game. I think he might just about get an assist for the goal. His shot sort of poked and deflected a couple of times before falling to Matty Goden, but a really good performance, and he was a really important part of that team. They didn't have a lot to do defensively, Charlton, but everything they did correctly in defence, it was all down really to Lloyd Jones.
I mean, he had that chance, didn't he? I think they were talking about on commentary that it was only a matter of time before he did, played a crucial role in the goal, that he'd be kicking himself for the chance that he should have put away. And then 30 seconds later, he goes and, plays a crucial role in getting 3 points. Obviously, dare I say, he's the darling of that Charlton side. I see a lot of conversation on X about him. He's a young player, a lot of potential. It's quite interesting looking at SofaScore. This probably tells you what stats have to say about a lot of these things. He's not even the highest rated centre back. Both Ramsey and Leslie have both apparently had better games than him. But what does that tell you? Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily.
I suspect that miss you alluded to is an aspect
Probably
in that
weighs
sort of
into that,
rating
yeah.
being knocked down, because it was a very poor miss, 38th minute of the game, and he sort of headed it sideways rather than on target. Described as the worst playoff game ever by Steve, a Birmingham fan, in the comments here. And I mean, it looked for a very long time that there wasn't going to be any action at all. I think the first shot on target came, I think it was actually the goal that was scored in the 81st minute. Kone hit the side netting on the hour mark, but overall the game was it was poor, lots of sloppy passing. Every time you sort of thought something was going to come, the ball was given away by one of the two sides, and Kone was soon taken off. The 73rd minute he was hauled off, and I think that brings us on nicely to another point to bring out of this, and just talk about Wycombe, really, how poor they were in this game in particular. No shots on target in any game is bad, but in a playoff game is unacceptable, really, isn't it? There's no two ways about it.
I mean, they've been on a downward spiral, haven't they? Like a very gentle slope, kind of masked by the bit of the gap that they built up throughout most of the season. But they've been going downwards under Mike Dodd, and the thing is, if they'd have got that one goal, which they had their chances, and there was one chance that they were very, very close. They had
a couple of blocks in quick succession.
A couple of blocks that I think that they really should have scored from. But really, really disappointing, I think, from both of them. A huge thank you to Kelly as well for that donation. Thank you very much, and hopefully you'll be with us next season. I think you're a Wrexham fan though, aren't you? So maybe not, but a huge thank you anyway. But yeah, really disappointing from Wycombe, I should say. We've had conversations in our chat. Mike Dodds, where does his position lie going into next season? Do they give him the chance because he's only had half a season? Really disappointing from him, I suppose. But they just never really felt like threatening, did they? They did. I don't think they had a single shot on target officially during the game. So yeah,
to sort of bounce off that, I wrote down that quite early on in the game that Charlton had the most threat, and the entire game that didn't change, did it? They were the only team with any threat at all. Wycombe did absolutely nothing, barring that one good chance they had where the double block, as we mentioned, in quick succession, that about 5 minutes before Matty Goden went up the other end, and a little bit of luck, admittedly, in the goal, but you just got to put the ball in the back of the net. It doesn't matter how they come, and that fell nicely to him with a couple of deflections. But as I say, just doesn't matter how. It's just about getting that goal. And I talked about Kone coming off briefly there. That felt like an interesting decision for me. I know he's been off the boil as of late. A lot of his goals and contributions came in the earlier parts of the season. But can you be taking off I mean, he's still their star man. Can you be taking him off with 15 minutes to go of a playoff game? It's an interesting, to say the very least, decision to me.
It's one of them that when something's not working, the easiest thing to do is swap it around up top. Like that is what managers do. They don't change centre backs very often and whatnot. You change up front. So I think that was the roll of the dice they had. Looking at the unused substitute, they had Shamal George, Joe Lowe, and Tyreek Backinson as the players they didn't bring on. I don't really know what else you can do. You have to roll the dice, and when you've got a striker that, Kone, we'll say for 2/3 of the season was the player of the season, and I suppose on kind of the balance of the whole season, he probably maybe deserves player of the season, but he's had a shocking final third. It has been shocking. His confidence is absolutely battered. So you just wonder, dare I say, why start him? Why start him? Why, maybe drop him, pull that magic trick out the hat, start on your dimmer or whatnot, and then bring Kone on as an impact player or something like that, because that's not what people are expecting. He's been poor, and sometimes you just need to shake it up and chucking him out for 79 minutes or whatnot he played in the end.
Just
73
under,
minutes, 73 minutes he played in the end. And he what's he contributed? Not a single shot on target, 2 shots on target, I think Wycombe got in the first leg. So it's poor from him over 180 minutes of football. And dare I say, Matty Goden has kind of taken his role as I think they use the phrase "fox in the box" or something like that. I forget what the phrase was they used.
Well,
but
that's it. Yeah.
He snuck in, and that's what Kone needed to do and didn't do. So
yeah, I mean, Kone's not scored since March, a goal and an assist against Rotherham, a real long string of games since where he's not found the back of the net. But Matty Goden, you definitely can't say that about him. He got a couple on the final day of the season against Burton, scored against Wycombe a couple of games before that in the league, that 4-0 victory, and gets the all-important goal here. He's been Mr. Consistent. I described him as a couple of weeks ago on our review of the final day of the season. 18 goals for him in 41 League One games this season. He just pops up when you need a goal, Matty Goden, doesn't he? I mean, we knew when they brought him in at Charlton that he's a man you can rely on to score goals at this sort of level of football and the Championship, even if they do go on to win the final. He's just consistent and he'll pop up, and it's not the most glamorous goal in the world. It's not the best goal he'll ever score. It's not the best goal he's scored in the past 3 weeks. But it's the one that matters most because it's the one that's done the job. And that's what you just want from your striker, just being at right place, right time. And you trust Matty Goden in that situation.
I think it's really interesting, not only just in this game, but how he's gone about the whole of this season. How Charlton have gone about this whole of this season. I'll kind of widen the whole conversation out to that now. Because they've not, none of their players have been standout. When you look at Birmingham, you can name a couple of players. When you look at Wrexham, it's mainly the defence that they've had that has been the most impressive. When you look at, certain teams, there's always a standout player. In League One, you tend to get that. You tend to have teams built around a single player. Charlton, I couldn't really name you their standout player this season. They've had their consistent performance. They've had their players that have been, all right. Thierry Small today was incredible.
Really good
for most of the game. But Matty Goden, to go back to him, I dare I say he's not glamorous. He's not. He's not like Alfie May was last year, where all eyes were on him. He's not like Stansfield or Kone at all in that way that everyone knows the threat he has. And in this game, he didn't really do an awful lot, dare I say. But he got the goal. And at the end of the day, that's what he'll be remembered for. The 80 minutes before that finish won't be remembered, but he was in the right place at the right time. And he's got he's got the goal. And at the end of the day, as stupid as it sounds, we'll dumb the punditry down to the very basic level here. It doesn't matter what you do in the 80 minutes before you go. If you score a goal, and that's the only goal in 180 minutes of football between the two sides, you're going to win the playoff semi-final. Sorry, we'll get to the final in a bit, but that's what matters. And if Charlton can do that to Orient, dumb the game down, make it really boring, and then score when it matters. You saw even after the goal, Wycombe had no reply at all. Charlton, it wasn't just that goal. Charlton, when Charlton scored, he didn't think that they were going to concede. Did you? I never thought.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Would get back into it. So to go back to Matty Goden, if only he was this glamorous and getting these headlines at the start of the season, and we probably have a different player of the season in League One, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting in point there in terms of sort of the quality of Charlton's play. I don't see the final. I mean, obviously it's I guess it's the poison chalice, isn't it? Saying you expect goals in it, but I expect that final to be a good game, and I know yourself and Sam obviously have got a very vested interest in the final. We were doing a preview closer to the time, but I don't see the final being at this sort of level of drab. I think Charlton have perhaps been dragged down to Wycombe's level in these couple of games, this one especially, because, I mean, Wycombe are playing some really shoddy football throughout this second half of the season, got on a decent run of results to keep them in the mix, and then those 3 defeats in succession against Wycombe, against Charlton, Leyton Orient and Stockport, the 3 other teams who have been in this playoff race. And then obviously that brought them into these back-to-back games against Nathan Jones's team, and I mean they've just looked poor for this entire second half of the campaign, and it seemed to me like that Charlton had been sort of pulled down, dragging and screaming to that sort of standard of football, and perhaps against Leyton Orient, who are a team in good form and a team that are playing some good football, they're on the front foot, that perhaps they'll be elevated back up. And I think that brings us on nicely. A couple of bits we'll go back onto to talk about the game. But Chris put in a Charlton fan, putting in our comments here on YouTube, is looking forward to an all-London derby playoff final. And we'll touch on that. Obviously, the next step now, the job's not done yet for Charlton. They're in the final. They get Leyton Orient. Of course, you was on here with Sam last night for that one. And it looks an interesting final. It looks a good final. I think fingers crossed, it'll be an interesting one, and everyone travelling from one side of London to the other for the game itself.
Do you know what? For me, it's the final that I think I wanted. The two teams that you can kind of create story arcs for all of them. But for Charlton, it's a game for them to kind of get back to where they want to be. That they feel like they are a championship side. And, dare I argue with the size of their stadium and whatnot, dare I say that's probably a fair opinion. For Leyton Orient, Sam will tell you about the whole storyline the last time they were in a League One playoff final and the takeover and whatnot with that. For them, I think that's also, it's an incredible storyline, both sides. I don't want to. We'll come on to predictions when we do the episode in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll keep our powder dry for that one.
I won't go into that, but in terms of how I think that final will play out, I don't know. Charlton, I'm very interested by, because I don't know what Charlton will turn up. I don't want to say I've lost a bit of faith in Charlton in terms of what turns up, but the side that beat Burton 3-1. And the side that beat Huddersfield 4-0 is also the same side that only managed to scrape past Cambridge 1-0, only beat Mansfield 2-1, and obviously capitulated against Wrexham. So, for as much as we say Charlton are this big side, and for as much as Sam will tell you in the preview that he's terrified of Wycombe, I don't know why I keep getting them mixed up. As much as Sam will tell you he's terrified of Charlton, sorry. I don't see what there is to be afraid of. Like when I look at the actual numbers, Leyton Orient are the team to kind of fear here. I mean, they're not glamorous. They don't have, dare I say, if you look at it squad versus squad, like position by position, I'd probably choose Charlton. You'd see more Charlton players, but Orient for me, they're the team to watch out for. They've got the momentum. They've got the for as much as the fans, you saw the fans with the pitch invasion at Charlton today. The fans, I think, Orient's fans are more behind them at this point. The morale in the squad, the atmosphere in the squad, I'd probably say is more behind Orient at the minute. I'm going to definitely mince my words here, but it's gonna. I think Orient are the ones to kind of watch out for. And an interesting note from Scott: do you think the final will have half and half scarves? I don't think if you just take a red scarf into the playoff final, you should be all right? Because they're both, they're going to be very similar, aren't they? You're not going to have much of a half and half design.
I guess to develop your thought a little bit more there, and maybe you've been spending too much with Sam on the preview podcast.
Maybe
come in form there on the Leyton Orient side of things. I mean, I guess to play the other side of it with Charlton, I mean, they're a good team, Charlton, aren't they? I don't think that can get lost. I mean, they've been poor in these couple of games, but they've been playing against a poor team. And I talked about that a moment ago in terms of, I think maybe they've been sort of dragged down a little bit to Wycombe's level. But they're a good side. Nathan Jones, I think we need to talk about in the last few minutes of this episode. I think they're a strong team, and I mean they finished third for a reason. Finished fourth for a reason. I beg your pardon. And I mean they were going to finish third for a good while, weren't they? And I guess they fell off that just at the end. But I think it's hard to look past them for me. They're the team I back, but maybe it's just because whereas you're sort of, I guess, more back in sort of the Leyton Orient sort of sense around the place. I mean, it was really it's hard not to watch those pictures last night with Richard Wellens running over to the away end and his interview after the match, which is well worth a watch if everyone hasn't seen it. And I'm sure Nathan Jones's tonight will be similar in terms of the atmosphere around it, and it's hard to bet against that. But for me, I still always I've got that feeling that Charlton are just going to have enough and just going to be better on the day. But obviously, we'll talk about that nearer the time. Before we do go, it is worth, I think, talking about both managers. We'll start with Nathan Jones. We've got a couple of comments about Mike Dodson. We'll talk about that before we go. And Nathan Jones, you could tell it was a massive moment for him. He was, as I spoke about a little bit earlier on, sort of breaking down in tears before the end of the game. It's been a big moment for him. As much as it's been a big moment for Charlton, he's really sort of proved himself, hasn't he? Over this season. And you can tell he really wants it, can't you?
I mean, I've seen a couple of fan podcasts already mocking him. But let's put it this way: if you were a Charlton fan, or if that was your team, you'd be the first one praising him for having that passion and whatnot. So it's very easy to mock him when you've got that sort of belief and that sort of passion in it. I love to see more of that. I don't know why you'd kind of mock that. I mean, that's what all the fans are doing at home, isn't it? You're all on your hands and your knees and you're praying like he is. So why mock him for him doing it on the standing on the sideline? Nathan Jones, he is a very easy target a lot of the time. We, even us on this podcast, will occasionally make a bit of a jibe at him. We'll say, as he let his players go to the shopping centre. And
I'm going to keep that for you and Sam. I think I've got Sam on my side on the Nathan Jones debate. We're big fans over on the review show.
We occasionally take a bit of a jive at him, but at the end of the day, you have to, you're the manager of a football team. You have to have a tightly run ship at the end of the day. And, who are we to complain at that? Do you know what I mean? It's obviously getting results. That's the way that he likes to play. It's clearly showing good discipline in his play. That discipline that he's enforcing off the pitch, they've just done on the pitch, as you can see by the fact that they've not conceded a goal in 180 minutes of football. So fair play to him. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and what I said about Nathan Jones at the start of this episode, if you just joining us, it felt more personal to him, what he's had to do to prove himself as a manager. We can all kind of relate to that, can't you? When someone has doubted you and you've had to go, you've had to take not just one step back, but two steps back. And, now he's literally back on his knees and kneeling up to take that next step forward. And if he can get Charlton back into the Championship, that will be a huge achievement for him after so many years of us kind of writing them off as a club.
Yeah, he's a heart on his sleeve manager for sure, and you can always tell that. And I think the important bit is you can tell it's real, can't you? It's not like you get some characters where you can tell maybe it's put on a little bit, this sort of passion and energy around the place. But Nathan Jones absolutely feels it 100%. And in the other dugout was Mike Dodds. We've got a comment here. He has to go. He's incompetent. I'm assuming that is from a Wycombe fan. And I mean, I guess sort of heat of the moment, it may seem worse than it is at the moment, but it's been the whole time, hasn't it, with Mike Dodds? You had Jaden Wilkins on your show previewing these semi-finals. I spoke to Jaden a few times over the second half of the season, sort of getting his thoughts from games and how he sort of sees it with Wycombe fans as a whole and the mood music, if you like. And it's been negative the whole way through. I mean, selection has been an issue. In-game management has been an issue. Connection between the players, the fans, that sort of those two sides of the crowd and what's happening on the pitch have been disconnected for great parts of his spell so far at Wycombe. I mean, I understand it's hard for both of us here, me and you, Callum, to give predictions very sort of briefly after a game like this, but you assume there will be conversation in terms of if he is the right man for Wycombe going forward, or if it's a cut losses and just say, perhaps it's just not worked, this appointment.
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think most, if you're looking at 90-80% of the clubs in League One, they are probably getting rid of him. But this is Wycombe Wanderers, right? Who they've not been, for as much as their kind of reputation is that they don't have a huge amount of money, given how many their average attendance, they're not short on cash. They're one of those clubs that have quite a lot of investment behind the scenes, from what we believe anyway. And I think it's a difficult one for me because they stuck by Ainsworth and Bloomfield for so long, right? And I think they'll stick by Dodds. I think there will be a lot of behind the scenes discussion, and I think that high turnover of players that we saw in January will continue into summer. I think there'll be a lot of players, the likes of Kone, I can't see sticking around. Other players that I can't see really sticking about for next season. A lot of them will kind of fancy their chances of playing at championship level because, for half the season they were kind of playing at that level, dare I suggest. But Dodds himself needs to kind of, I don't want to say reevaluate his priorities, but we saw with everything else. We saw with the season, he struggles to attack. I mean, we saw it in this one. Like you said,
they had nothing going forward.
Down. Yeah, and that's Dodds' issue now. He needs to kind of figure out a way to attack, to make the most of the fact that he had the player of the season in the team. And you're not using him. Like, I don't get that personally. He needs to find a way. And if you're a striker looking to join this team, and you've just seen the player of the season become ineffective since that manager's arrival, that's not attractive. You're going to struggle to attract players that way as well. You have to think of it that way as well. The one word answer of will Dodd stay? I think he'll stay. I think it's a very un-Wycombe thing to get rid of him. They're kind of one of those clubs now that's going into this new wave of keeping managers for the long term and hoping they turn a corner, because eventually they do. It would have been very easy for Charlton to sack Jones after the start of this season. I think they were 14th at one point this year. So it would have been very easy for them to get rid of Jones. But back to Wycombe, I think they'll stick by him. And we'll kind of get a sense in December, well, probably earlier than that, as to whether it was just a poor run of form and Dodds has got what it takes.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you in broad strokes there to close off this podcast. We've seen earlier today Ruben Sellers being dismissed by Hull. And I think they're the opposite end of the spectrum. Hull being very quick to get rid of a manager who has got potential and has proven that before, whereas Wycombe have perhaps, rightfully so in my view, will give managers more time. And I think that should happen more often. Managers being given a chance, perhaps being given two chances.
I mean, if they do get rid of Dodds, Sellers is not a bad manager to get in, but that's a conversation for another time.
Exactly. Well, there is lots to come between now and the playoff final itself. As we mentioned earlier on, Callum and Sam will be here with a preview in the days leading up to it. Me and Seb will do a review in the hours following the final itself on Sunday the 25th. And we've got one more episode as well, haven't we, Callum, between now and then, which you can shed some light on for us.
Yeah, it's going to be. I have to get the schedule up because I think we're not releasing the interview until we did a smashing interview today. I put it out on Twitter. We've done a very interesting interview with Paul Farman. That will be out after the playoff final. So I'm looking forward to that one. That's going to be very interesting. But we'll be reacting to our pre-season predictions as well, which again. I don't like the look of.
Perhaps the worst episode we'll do.
I'm not liking the look of that one.
No,
I'm not liking the idea of that one at all, but oh well. We'll see.
Well, lots to come over the next couple of weeks. And further on as well, we've got some interviews to keep you all occupied over the summer before the season gears back into action. But the playoff final is next up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us live here on YouTube. Everyone listening along on Spotify, other podcast platforms after the fact as well. Thank you all for joining us. And we'll be back in the run-up to the playoff final.